Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today on our Q&A Cafe. This is part two in our reporting and creating queries best practices with your hosts, Shannon Kennedy, Tim Singleton, and Daryl. And I've forgotten his last name, Shannon. I'm so sorry there. It's totally slipped my brain, but Daryl. And in for SAP Business One. Just a reminder that we will not have a Q&A Cafe next week due to our proximity to American Thanksgiving, and please stay tuned for our December schedule, which should be posted in the next week or so. My name is Catherine. I will be facilitating. If you have any questions, as this session will be recorded, we'll just keep everyone on mute, but there should be a questions and a chat drop down, so please feel free to type your questions in there at any point during the presentation, and we will try to answer them towards the end of the presentation. If we can't get to them, please make sure that you reach out to us at vistaview@vistaviewsolutions.com. You can always watch this recording on our YouTube channel. Please be sure to subscribe. All right, so without further ado, I'll just hand that over to Shannon.
Thank you, Catherine. Thank you again to everyone who's joining us for our continuation of working with SAP Business One and their queries and reporting. Today we will begin directly where we left off during our last session, and I'll be passing over to Daryl Goodman, who will be running the rest of this session. And as Catherine mentioned, the video in its entirety will be available once our webinar is finished as well. So feel free to ask questions at the end, or feel free to email us direct. Thank you again, and Catherine, if you could pass it over to Daryl, that would be great.
Sorry, the next section that we have is lesson 3, and let's just quickly hop into the PowerPoint here and see what we're going to cover in lesson 3. Is to be able to understand using some of the queries in reports and dashboards within inside of SAP Business One. So again, there are several tools that can be utilized. There's Crystal Reports, there is Interactive Analysis, which is an Excel-based tool, as well as Pervasive Analytics, and the Resolve Query and Report Launcher. What we're going to be covering today is going to be the Pervasive Analytics and the Query and Report Launcher, because those are inside of SAP Business One. But again, you can definitely use queries as the basis for Crystal reports and being able to send them out as well. Okay, so again here, we're going to take a look at being able to get items that have no committed quantity. Committed quantity in SAP means that there's nobody asking for it. So there's nobody using it in a production order, there's nobody using it in a sales order. So why would I want to hold this inventory if I've really got none of it? I should maybe make a sale or do something else along those lines. So that would be, why would we be able to do that? And as being able to plan for our labor and making sure that we have space, we have the ability to use a container management module of Resolve, but it really doesn't matter what the data is. In this case, we were just seeing that, in our system, we're tracking the containers that are coming in from overseas, and I know what date they're arriving. So I'm going to build an identifier to be able to know which containers are arriving this month and how many are coming in. And when I do this month, it could have been anything. So it could have been this day, this week, whatever I wanted to be able to use. We can also use the queries that we built earlier to develop KPIs that we can put onto our screen or onto our dashboard. So in this case, we can look at the analysis or to be able to help us during our data entry. So for example, if I need to be able to make a fast decision, so I'm entering in a sales order and I want to know how is this order shipped in the past, so I can quickly get the appropriate freight quote to them or whatever it's going to be. You can use that information. Or if I want to find out, is there a heavy return history, customers calling up and they're complaining about an item or something else like that, I can go ahead and take a look at some of those return histories. So again, you'll have access to each of these queries, and we'll come back to the PowerPoint for the introduction to lesson 4. But let's go ahead and start by taking a look at what's called a count widget. So first of all, we've gone ahead and we've built a query. And in the query manager here, you can see I've got my widgets and I've got my different queries that are associated with the widgets. Okay, so I've got my items with no commitment. And again, you can see this is basically just selecting some data simply from the item master where the committed is equal to 0. And then I went ahead and I sorted it by on hand. So you can see this is my worst defending items. These are stuff that I'm holding a lot of and can't sell. Okay, so in order to be able to use this, I came in and I went into tools, and then within the tools, I came into Cockpit and then Count Widget. And what I did in the Count Widget here was to put a widget here where I've got the no commit. I created it here, specified the query, okay, and that's going to create the count widget. And then you can see I did the same thing with the containers arriving. But the reason I wanted to do this was to be able to show you that you can use user-defined fields and tables in your queries. So if you've got something from a third party or maybe from us or just something that you've added as a user-defined field or table, you can use the same concept here to be able to identify this. So you can see I'm now able to find the containers that arrived, okay? And again, you went and I was able to assign that to a count widget. Now, once you assign it to a count widget, you can see here, you can come into your cockpit and manage your cockpit to be able to add the widgets. And I've already done that here for the containers arriving this month. So you can see it shows me that I have 6 containers arriving this month. And if I click on it, it will execute the query where I'm able to come in here and see the details. And this is whatever I chose to include within that. So this is really useful because you can use pretty much any table that you want or anything that you want to be able to measure. So you can see I was able to come in and be able to get a counter the same way that SAP provided the ones called My Open AR Invoices or My Sales Orders Not Delivered. These were from SAP, but I was able to add my own that are based on my own logic. Okay. Now, within Pervasive Analytics, I was able to go ahead and build this KPI. And so you can see here, I've got my average sales this quarter, what my goal is, what my trend is compared and all that information. So let's take a quick look and see how that worked. And again, I came into Pervasive Analytics, okay? And I have an existing one that I already built, but I'll just build a new one quickly here for you for the KPIs. And what you can see is that all of my user-defined queries show up here. So that sales analysis query that we created before, where I've got my sales analysis or my group by customer or whatever it's going to wind up being. So what I can do is I can expand this and it will show me the list of the things that are in here. So I wanted to be able to take something like the line total, okay, and drag it here. All right. Now you notice again, it gives me the ability to do the sum or the average. And so you can see here, it's starting to show me the values already. But then what I can do is I can drag something like the document date, and I could say this year, or I could say this month, okay? And when I do that, it will automatically redefine this. Finally, I can come in here and give it a goal. So I want, I don't know, 2,000, and we want to do increase sales goal. Okay, and then finally for this trend, you see I have the ability to come in here and see how did I do over last month or how did I do over the same month in the last year. So those are some of those things. And of course, you can build more advanced trends as well. There is documentation available on using your KPI designers. But the key here was that using a query that we already built and saved and we might be using for other functions is going to give us the ability to come in here and then be able to build a KPI that we can save and oh, I forgot to give it a name. So this will be sales, monthly sales, okay? And we can go ahead and save this. Anyway, I'll just come back and show you the one that I already saved because I gave it a good name last time. But you can see in here, I've got my, here's one that I did for rental revenue. You know, it's the same kind of concept. So I was able to come in here and pick my rental queries and be able to save those things, and I was able to type it in and save it. And it was probably the KPI goal that was too long. So in any case, that's a KPI. So those KPIs give you a number that you can put on the screen. The other thing that you can do is you can build dashboards. So if I come in here and I take a look at the sales analysis dashboard, okay, you can see it's the same concept here. So what I do is I come in here and I'm able to search for the data source. So you can see I have all of my user-defined queries, where I was able to come in here and say I wanted a sales analysis query, and you can see I used the one that I built earlier. And I dragged and I dropped this over, and you can see I was able to say I want the line, but now I want to be able to see it by group. So I'm able to get a visualization. So if you look at the raw data, you can see where that's coming from. But I'm able to get a nice visualization here, by customer group, So I'm able to take some component of this and then be able to use the different visualization structures. So this is a really good way to be able to extend the cockpit. But one other nice thing that's useful about this is you do have the ability to create an action. And so what this would give me the ability to do is if I wanted to link this to another sidebar inside of SAP, I could specify what I want to link it to. So I could link it to an item code. And if I linked it to the item code, what that's going to give it the ability to do is when I drill into an item and I look at the item, I'm able to get this same report now filtered down by that item so I can see which customer groups are buying and what volume they're doing in buying my products. So you can really extend the logic that SAP is giving you, via the pervasive analytics. Now, one of the other things that we've done here is if I go back and I take a look at my sales order here, and I'll just pull up an existing sales order. So let me go to okay, so here's a sales order. I've got some products for this customer, and you can see I'm able to right click, and there's a function here called Query Launcher. Within Query Launcher, this is going to give me the ability to run queries. Now, we already talked about the fact that I could have a user-defined value query against the sales order. But what this gives me the ability to do is to come in here and write a query where I'm able to pass in multiple pieces of information. So here you can see I want to see who the customer was and what the ship to was and what the item code is. So based on that, you can see all I was able to do is right click and I say, how does this item ship? And here you can see it normally ships by FedEx if I need it by early morning. Otherwise, it's by UPS 2-day. And that's all based on dynamically. I didn't have to set up this data or anything else like that. It's reading from this past sales orders to be able to find out how this customer and this ship to have previously shipped this particular order. So again, you can extend your business logic that way. And then similarly, we had the ability to come in and look at unrelated data. So here, if I wanted to be able to see, okay, for all customers who've returned this product, when did they return it, the last time we returned it, what the return reasons or actions were, or so on and so forth. And again, that query here was just passing through the item code information. So that came from a tool that we call Query Launcher. And in the Query Launcher, the ability to come in and link those queries to your forms. And then what we're going to do is go to lesson 4 after this. But you can see I was able to come in here and just link the queries to the forms, or you can link queries to the main menu as well. So that's sort of a useful tool. All right, and then just switching back to lesson 4 here, we want to use similar kind of logic now to be able to use a tool called Advanced Allocations inside of Resolve to be able to work with the SAP Business One pick lists and create them on an automated basis. Okay, so again, what we'll do here is we're going to look at Resolve Advanced Allocations. And what you can see here is that it gives me the ability to build several rules associated with how I want my pick tickets to be released. So we'll go ahead and we'll take a look at, let's say, the Amazon orders. Okay, and within the Amazon orders, I have the ability to come in here and specify what I want to have happen. So I was able to build a query. And within that query, again, you can see I'm using the saved query from SAP. So again, this is just a regular SAP query. We came in here and we said we wanted to find all the sales orders that are for Amazon. So again, you can see here, this is just a query. And the key that makes this one work and be specific for the Amazon is that I said it needed to be a sales order that was approved, open, and for my customer, Amazon. So C0002 is my Amazon customer. And that's going to give me a list of all of my Amazon customers. Now, you might be asking, why would I want to create a query to be able to identify my Amazon sales orders? And the reason is that I might have a different schedule for Amazon. So within Amazon here, you can see I want to make sure that I release every 10 minutes. So if I'm getting a whole bunch of orders that I'm importing from Amazon, Amazon's got some pretty tight rules in terms of being able to ship and making sure that you give tracking numbers and those kinds of things. And if you don't, it can hurt your ability to sell on Amazon or even stop your ability to sell on Amazon. So I might want those releases to be more frequent than some of my other order origination points. So something that comes in from my website or that comes in from the phone or something else along those lines. So being able to isolate those sales orders and to be able to put them on their own schedule is going to be pretty useful for me. And in addition to that, I can also say that I want to use the rules. So I want to release the line if it's 100% available. I don't want to partially ship an item. I can partially ship a order, but not an item. And then I can put in some filters. And we'll take a look at some of the filters in here as we go to the next example. Now, the next example that we have is going to be identifying the orders that are going to be ship complete. So we'll take a look at that. Okay, and again, you can see this is based on a query. I want to pick this on a schedule where it's going to be less frequent than the Amazon. So you can see I'm doing that every 2 hours. My query here is basically the same query. So I was able to copy and paste the query, but I changed my where clause, and that makes the whole logic completely different. So if I come in here and I take a look at my where clause, you can see here it's now an approved order that's open, but it also has to be where the allow partial shipment is set to no, which means that it must ship complete. So when that happens, these sales orders will go out, okay? And again, the reason that I have this one separated is going to be that if I take a look at my pick action here, I'm only going to release this sales order. It should have been if the document was 100% complete. I must have selected the wrong one. So I apologize about that. So the idea here is that I now have orders that can only ship complete. I don't want to have multiple pick lists because SAP allows me to be able to have multiple pick lists. But I want to make sure that I'm restricting that based on my query rules so that I only get one pick list, that I only ship everything when I have everything. And so the system will monitor to be able to see that. And then another one that's really great, particularly if you or your customer is like an e-commerce shipper or something else like that, is being able to use special allocation rules. So here you can see I have single item, single unit, and what this query is going to do, if I come in here and I take a look at this query, so this is going to be my single item, single unit query. Most of the query is the same, except here I did a situation where I wanted to find only sales orders that had one row, okay, and the quantity was only one, okay. So I was able to do both that in a where clause and a having clause. A having clause, since I haven't explained that before, is basically the same as a where clause, but it's where you have to do it on something that's already been summarized. So if it's part of a summary operation, you do it in the having section. And the business logic behind this is that if I'm ordering T-shirts or iPhone cases or whatever it is, okay, as long as it's not serialized, and even if it is serialized, doesn't really matter. But the point is that which unit I get doesn't matter. So if I have 50 customers that ordered the same, T-shirt or hat or whatever, okay, rather than going and picking them by sales order or anything else, I can go and I can change where I want to pick them from and how I want to pick them. Okay, so if we take a look at my pick action rule, okay, I'm now able to filter just from a particular zone in my warehouse. So I want to take them from my fast moving items zone, okay? And when I created my pick list generation rules, I grouped them not by order or by customer, but by item. Because I just want to go grab, if I've got 50 that I have to ship, I just want to go grab 50 of them and bring them to my shipping area. Because when I get to my shipping area, I can print out the 50 labels and apply them to any of the units because they're all the same. So it's able to really make it faster and easier for you to be able to get product out the door, make it more efficient, save labor costs, do all of those different kinds of functions. So you can see where SAP's Pick Back Manager is a great tool, and using SAP's pick lists is a great tool. By using the queries, you're able to add logic to be able to control when to control where and to control how your picks are going to be released in your warehouse. So I think that's a pretty cool use of queries. Again, I'm just going to try to pick up the pace here a little bit, and we'll move into lesson 5. And so you can take a look at that. Now, lesson 5 is basically talking about being able to decide how you want to be able to buy your products. And I already showed a simple example where we could just simply say, okay, we're below minimum and we need to run MRP. But in this case, I'm going to use the resolve inventory planning. And in the resolve inventory planning, you'll see that we already have the ability to use several built-in formulas. So let me just go ahead and quickly take a look at the inventory planning, and I'll explain just very briefly what it is so that you can understand why adding a formula to it, a query, can be so powerful. Okay, so what this is giving me the ability to do is on an item warehouse basis to be able to control how much I'm going to buy, make, or transfer, very similar to some of the features that are in SAP. And I can use forecasts, also similar to the base SAP functionality. But when I build the forecasts in here, you can see that I have several forecast formulas. Now, everything from the 6-month rolling average through the weighted average here, these are all built in, and these are all based on well-established formulas that are published by gurus like Gordon Graham or John Schreibfeder from Effective Inventory Management that are used within SAP Business One and, of course, many other ERP systems as well. But what you'll often find is that when you go and get into the details, usually the purchasing manager has come up with some variation of the formula or their own complete formula that's distinct to them that they want to be able to use. So rather than forcing them into a model that was prescribed by the authors, you are going to give them the ability to be able to control the rules. And so once you do that and you create this custom formula, so again, if we scroll up to the setup here, you can use these to build your own custom formulas. And so you can build something simple like a 5% growth, or you can build something very complex, which is what I have here. And what the reason this one is, you can see it's a very long query. The reason it's as complex as it is this was a sample that we built for one of our customers, and in this particular example, what wound up happening is they wanted to be able to use calculated data to be able to predict the next number. So we're starting with known data. So I'm starting with, okay, next month's forecast is going to be based on the last 3 months usage using their own methods. So they wanted to use a weighting for the different months. But then as we move forward into the future forecast periods, we want to be able to use some of the forecasts that we already created that are not yet saved into the formula. So as you can see, queries can get to be as complex as you need them to be, where you can actually go ahead and make multiple joins and multiple results and so on and so forth. But you can start with a simple query or a complex query. But ultimately what this is going to do is it's going to use this usage data here. So if I take a look at my forecasts, you can see these forecast numbers are calculated based on the formula. And now I'm using that formula that was chosen based on that. So if I was to come in here and change, last months from 36 to, let's say, 50, okay, and update that, then now if I was to come in here and do my reset demand, you can see that these numbers will update, okay, and it was able to reforecast going all the way out into the future dynamically by using the custom logic that that particular customer wanted to use. So again, you are able to use those queries to be able to kind of manipulate the data and work with your inventory planning. Similarly, we're going to go into lesson 5, and in lesson 6 rather, we're going to talk about using the ability to interact with external parties. So this is being able to move data back and forth between EDI and also with an e-commerce system or a third-party logistics warehouse, an outsourced warehouse, And so we'll take a look at those two modules in here. But again, this logic can be generalized as well. And so within that, let's go ahead and take a look at a simple example. So if I go into my EDI and I want to take a look at my EDI export, okay? So when I'm sending data out by EDI, you have the ability to go in and do a mapping, of course. You know, there's going to be rules that are associated with your EDI transaction partner. But that mapping, you know, instead of making it so complex, I might want to have a situation where I'm going to instead send the data based on a query here. So inside of SAP Business One, when we enter a sales, an AR invoice, for example, okay, maybe they want to know who the salesperson is, but SAP doesn't store the salesperson on the AR invoice. It stores the salesperson code, that internal number that we talked about before. So here you can see you have the ability to create an example where you can come in here and choose the field from the AR invoice that you want to replace the data, and then you can use a query to be able to dynamically replace data. So I'm going to take the salesperson's name from the salesperson's table, where the salesperson's code is equal to the code that's on the invoice. And then here you can see I'm filtering it by the document number for the transaction that I am submitting. So you can see I have the ability to do this for the import and the export, as well as being able to manipulate data for individual transactions that come in. So if we take a look at incoming transactions in the EDI control, you can see if I look at my customer configuration. Now for this, just as a general rule of thumb, queries are quite powerful. There is a type of query called an update query, which you can see here. SAP does support the use of an update query, which means it's going to write data directly into a table, field and table, but only for user-defined fields. So please do not ever use queries to update a standard SAP Business One field. That should always be done through the SDK or the DI API or their service layer. But if you are using user-defined fields, you can go ahead and you can update these so that if we're importing orders that are coming in from a trading partner or from the web or for something else like that, you have the ability to go ahead and set rules such as free freight or other kinds of things based on the queries. And you can see I did it at the header level or at the row level. So at the row level, one of the common things is to be able to put in the country of origin, because when I go to ship, I need to be able to specify what the country of origin is going to be. And so, you know, in that regards, I'm able to automate that process again by using a query. And then last, and then Tim, I'll open it up for questions. But the last one here was just again with your 3PL. It was the same kind of concept here. 3PL allows you to import and export sales orders, purchase orders, item masters, and so on and so forth to an outside warehouse. And so in that example, besides just manipulating the data, I wanted to be able to limit which data was being sent. And so if we take a look at the 3PL configuration here, and I take a look, let's say just at the export configuration, and we'll go to the sales orders here. Oh, sorry, it was the business partners that I limited on. The ability to say that I don't want to send leads, I just want to send existing customers. So you can see I was able to specify that here. Or again, same kind of concept like we did with the EDI, where I want to send the salesperson's name and not their code. So, you know, as you can see, you have the ability to use the queries to substitute data or to be able to limit record sets, approvals, and so on and so forth. So I hope everybody enjoyed the training.
I did just want to say a huge thank you to Shannon and to Tim and Daryl for another fantastic session. As we mentioned, please make sure that if you have any further questions, you reach out to us at VistaView. That's VISTAVU at VistaViewSolutions coming up soon. Don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel.